We're on to our final session of the day. I'd like to welcome to the stage Jessie Dowd, Editorial Director at Path to Purchase, Sean Crawford, Managing Director for North America at Threefold, Leanne Gibson, VP and Managing Director for Walmart Connect Canada, and Richard Rodgers, Marketing Director at Keurig, Keurig Dr. Pepper.
So, quick disclaimer, this is not Leanne. We have another guest joining us today, so I'll let them introduce themselves in a moment. I know that you guys are going to give us a great discussion, and this is the last thing between our audience and their happy hour, so you got to make it good. All right, so kick us off. Tell us a little bit about what you do in your current role. Richard.
Sure. Richard Rodgers, Marketing Director for our Keurig system, basically the Keurig brewer at Keurig Dr. Pepper Canada. I lead an integrated team that we brought together recently. It's a mix of brand marketing, omnichannel marketing, digital shelf, and creative designers, all under one leadership.
John.
My name is Leanne Gibson. No, I'm joking. Sorry. My name is John. I'm the head of omnichannel retail here at Google and YouTube in Canada. In addition to that, I'm the co-chair with the actual Leanne Gibson of the IAB's Retail Media Committee. And then last but not least, I had the opportunity to build the original Walmart Media Group. So thanks for having me today.
Great. John.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Sean. As you can tell from the accent, I'm not a local, but I head up North America business for Threefold. We're a retail media network specialist consultancy, as well as the operator of some of the biggest global retail media networks, Boots Walgreens being one of those, and most recently, Asda.
Thanks for those intros. So I thought it might be fun to play a little icebreaker game. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the words retail media?
It's so expensive. No, it is, but no, it's a strategic enabler, just strategic spend for us to really build, full omnichannel plans to help us engage with shoppers.
John, what about you?
I'm going to go with mainstream. I think, maybe I'm bucking the trend slightly, but I think globally it's become a mainstream media player now, which is exciting for everyone in this room, exciting for the industry. It's in a big stage of growth. There's a lot to learn still, and I think the different global markets can help with that. But yeah, mainstream.
I would say finally, I've been involved in this sector since 2010. And it feels like this is finally that first moment where performance is finally catching up with promise. And that's a combination of like Amazon and what they've done in here as a sort of first mover advantage to other dominant omnichannel retailers putting a lot of skin in the game. It's a really interesting moment. I think it's also a shopper-led moment as well, so finally.
So it seems that the definition of retail media is constantly changing. So how would you define or redefine what retail media is in today's landscape?
For us, I mean, it's really an enabler to have true omnichannel, a true omnichannel path, simplify the shopping experience, and just seamless shopping from online to in-store, just have a same experience.
I mean, I would echo that. I think it's got to be about connected. It has to have the shopper at the heart of it, right? Retail media is not ad sales. And I think people and businesses that are pushing that agenda might be feeding into some of that survey that Cindy just showed about it being a tax or being, the retailer's money grab. I think if we put the shopper at the heart of everything that we're doing, that is the true definition of retail media. And it's important that any marketing campaign we do helps absolutely enhance their experience, whether that is in a store, on a website, or bringing them to those buying destinations.
I think at its best, it is the vendor's message told through the retailer's voice, to the retailer's customers. There are certain things a retailer can do which a vendor or manufacturer just cannot do, or that are able to unlock that even the largest manufacturers can't unlock. So when I think about the application of first-party data, like loyalty data, like receipt data, when I think about infrastructure like shopping feed or product catalogs, and when I think about omni and store, all of those things are things that even the most respected and well-developed manufacturers and vendors are generally incapable of doing. So it creates incremental opportunities to sort of tell that vendor story to their customers, their potential customers.
So earlier today, we spoke a little bit about the changes needed in organizational mapping to allow for those truly omni-channel campaigns. How are you seeing this play out, Richard?
Well, we took an approach a couple of years back to really remove the physical barriers between our, the in-store digital team. So, an approach we took is, pre-COVID times, we already had a well-established shop marketing team. We were already, increasing our investments to appropriate levels for retail media networks, and we were pushing that agenda of thinking omni-channel. So it was a way of operating. It wasn't just, the buzzword at the time, but we were trying to act on it, and we were really trying to bring it together. Then COVID hit, and it kind of, didn't help anybody, but it helped us push this agenda, and it allowed us to really accelerate that adoption internally. So what we did there is we brought together what was traditional digital shop marketing team with our digital shelf team, merged them into one. That way we can at least have the physical and digital shelf the same. And then just recently we went a step further and we added our brand marketing group to the mix. That way we didn't merge the functions, kept them distinct, but under one leadership we have our brand marketing team, our omni-channel marketing team, which includes digital shelf. And I think there's a lot of organizations that are, interested in doing that or exploring that. And I think we were lucky enough to take that plunge, and it's been very successful for us. And we anticipate other companies will follow. And
John, what have you seen?
I think there's been an adoption of omni-channel goals on the part of retailers. Pre-COVID, the goal was the most profitable default channel. So it was store for the most part. What we now recognize is this has been sort of a shopper-led revolution. 90% of customers in CPG, 90% of shoppers who are CPG customers are searching online or informing their path to purchase online before doing an in-store purchase. Ignoring retail media, ignoring the omnichannel effect of that retail media is at the peril of both the brand and the retailer. And the second thing we're also seeing is for retail media networks, they're starting to not just look at the markup or the margin, they're looking at the actual products driven. Retail media is in many cases the first or second best channel at driving sales of product for that particular retailer. So taking a more holistic view of the impact, both site and store, has never been more important, but it's also never been more popular as well.
So we talked a lot about trends throughout the day today, but what are some emerging trends that you're most excited about?
What I'm most excited about is finding that way to close the loop when you get back to that store level along this whole omni-channel journey. It's where we've had, or I guess within the Canadian retail network, it's been a little bit tricky to connect the two together. So while the retail media kits have been advancing in more and more features and capabilities, if ultimately the shopper is still going to the store, which is the large percentage as we just saw, how do you replicate that experience, and how do you how do you bring technology or anything into it to really replicate that experience at store? So I'll give you an example. We have a Keurig brewer is very highly pre-planned purchase. You don't just decide as you're casually browsing through a grocery store or retail store that you're going to go spend $100 plus to buy a new coffee machine. You research it because it broke, or you want to get into the system, you want something new. So while we've been spending a tremendous amount of money and time on optimizing our product pages with the right content, images, reviews, having everything there, you ultimately still want to touch the brewer. You want to look at it. You want to see if it's as good in real life versus what you saw online. So what we did is just some small things, and it's not groundbreaking. It won't sound exciting, but adding a simple QR code in some retailers, it's not miraculous. That people say that the QR code made a miraculous comeback. It didn't really. It was never really used properly. So the point is there that QR code is at least bringing us back to where we have the rich quality content, that it allows people to shop online, compare features, because in some stores you're going to navigate anywhere from a 4-foot to maybe a 12-foot section. It's kind of hard to walk back and forth to compare brewers. So what I'm most excited about there is finding ways that once you've done that research online, how do you visually see that? Whether it is through the use of technology directly in store, or seeing what you saw on that product page and then finding it, whether it's through the use of colors, design, shelving, whatever it may be, to really have that seamless experience between the two.
I think it's never been more important, but also never been more exciting to see what's happening around measurement right now. And I think that's a combination of retailers have made massive investments in measurement infrastructure over the course of the last several years. Some of that's been a byproduct of launching loyalty programs, it's also potentially been a byproduct of the way they're thinking about their own marketing and wanting to do a better job of attributing the ROI associated with everything that they do. So I think where we've seen measurement come from to where it is right now is deeply, deeply inspiring. Where that's going to is going to get really interesting. So, you know, every retailer that my team works with, that I get the chance to work with, leverages something called store visits reporting. Store visits reporting is a free capability that basically is able to attribute someone who clicks to the retailer's website and then goes into one of their physical stores in a given period of time. 3 days, 7 days, 90 days, however long it is, depending upon the category or the type of retailer. That allows us for the first time to have a really serious conversation about what's happening as people go from clicks to bricks. And given that that's 90% of how Canadians still transact, it's really, really important to get this one right. Outside of that, as more retailers have launched scaled, successful loyalty programs, we're getting a much more holistic view of the customer down to the individual customer. And while respecting obviously the need for privacy and not divulging confidential or sensitive information about that customer, it allows us to now attribute back from site to store, and to do it in a way that actually should build confidence and empower vendors and manufacturers to feel more comfortable to shift more of their time, effort, and resources into retail media. So having been on this for 14 years now, that to me is probably the most exciting thing that I'm seeing happening right now in the industry. It is funny, it happens at the same time as some organizations dig in on things like standalone flyer and that sort of thing. I think the process of flyer is great at selecting like cornerstone products and messages for a particular week, but the media flyer, and hopefully I don't elicit too much anger in the room, the media flyer is like dead or dying across virtually every market across Canada. So I think finding that right balance between the process that is working even better than ever and the media is super important.
I've got two. So I think we heard earlier, Europe is ahead in store. And I think when you're looking at the North American market, Canada as part of that, I think the in-store digitalization is a huge thing to get excited about. It really helps us offer that closed loop measurement. It helps us use loyalty data and that first party, really reliable data to start speaking to the right shoppers in the right place at the right time. Some of the stuff from the StrataCash presentation earlier, I think showed that really well. And I think that the digitalization of the store will help connect to all of the great things that are going on offsite. And helping drive that for brands and creating those opportunities in store that can actually help unlock those brand dollars, which is what everyone elusively is trying to get a hold of here, will really help the retail media networks grow and bring that incremental share of those dollars into that place. Because for marketers, it creates more channels that can be used in a more creative way and also in a more measurable way. And that kind of picks up on what you were just talking from measurement. I think transparency in measurement is actually something we should be excited about. It shouldn't be feared. I think retailers sometimes are worried about showing their brands what hasn't worked, but actually that's the best thing to do. The best thing is to show that you've tested something, you've tried it, and actually it didn't work, and that's okay. But we learn from that together, and then we can apply the media budget to different combination of channels, and then we can actually together grow sales, which is what the retailer wants and what the brand wants ultimately here to do. So I think transparent measurement is something that we should embrace, get after, and that with the digitalization of the store are the two things I'm excited about.
So we're hearing more and more about retail media being used as an upper funnel tactic. And so I would love to know if you have any examples that you could share on how retail media can go beyond short-term sales and ROI.
Yeah, it's always a tricky one. I mean, we always talk about, as I said, we've increased our investments in retail media. There's always been that question, what was the ROI? What was the ROI? VP Finance isn't here, so I can comfortably speak about it, but we don't look at just the ROI for that specific initiative one by like as a one-off, because whenever we invest in these retail media networks, we're tying it into what we're already doing at store level, and we look at it as a whole package. So an example of something that we've leveraged and we don't look at the ROI whatsoever is, again, looking at the insights, knowing that a brewer is so pre-planned and pre-shopped. We've got our own, Keurig.ca website, but we also have our retailer media hubs that we have on each one of our key retailer partners. So it's part of a retailer media kit, but we've done something that we've built brand hubs, just custom built from the ground up, super rich in content, the same video features, recipes you would find on our own websites, you can now find on the retailer websites. And we use that to build the brand love, to build the trust, to build that one-stop shop, as we know that consumers are shopping not only on our website, but they're looking at the retailer websites. So if you're already on one of the retailer websites, we're not trying to pull you off and then go do research somewhere else and then hope that you then go back. You're adding those friction points to it. So we've leveraged it there to replicate that full brand experience on the retailer websites. And it is not something that we look at from an ROI perspective. It's there to just build the engagement with our brand and get people, pull them in a little bit more.
I think about retailers and brands that are creating like more meaningful and enduring connections. And I'll use an example that I don't think will be competitive to anybody in the room, but Milwaukee and Home Depot did something really interesting over the course of the last year. So they created a thing called Pro Days, and basically Milwaukee did a multifaceted, multimedia program that was always on with Home Depot, which meant everything from like digital and social and paid representation on their website, all the way through to experiential and like sponsoring like a breakfast for pros at a bunch of targeted Home Depot stores across the country. I really like that because of like two particular attributes. The first one, it was always on. So, if Milwaukee's potential customer is always on, so should their retail media partnership be with their largest vendor. But then also number two, they also punctuated it with experiential, endearing engagements that allow them to stand out from virtually every other brand selling a brushless power drill. So I think, to me, like, the focus on the long term doesn't mean forsaking the short term, because all of us are beholden to quota and revenue targets and everything that comes along with it. But it also means keeping a keen eye to how you can punctuate an always-on strategy with more engaging elements to actually build those meaningful connections and then buttress them through some of those more experiential aspects.
I pick up what Claire said earlier, actually, about agreeing those metrics at the front between the retailer and between the brand. I think that's really important, because actually we should be talking about things that aren't just ROI and ROAS. We should be talking about the wider metrics that can help, again, unlock those wider budgets. One of the great things with one of our partners, Boots, Fenty, the cosmetic brand that Rihanna has, I think there, we had a really good open conversation between Boots and Fenty about what do they want to achieve here. And actually it was a huge awareness campaign to drive people into Boots to buy that cosmetic range from Boots and not from some of the big other players or direct online. And that meant that actually a full funnel use of tactics had to be used. Everything from experiential in big kind of train commuter stations, all the way through to store takeovers, through to all of the online elements as well, and then using the loyalty data to target lookalike brands and do that through connected TV with ITV, one of the big networks in the UK. So I think about retail media now as that total full funnel approach, but also having that really honest conversation between retail network and brand at the beginning to say, what are we trying to achieve here? And if it's awareness, then there's a whole host of tools that retailers can now use to do that. Just like if it's sales, it's going to be a different combination of media channels that need to be used to do that. So yeah, have that upfront conversation. And I think don't be afraid to just always think about retail media as a ROAS or ROI target-driven conversation.
There are obviously plenty of challenges to solve still for retail media, but my next question is for Sean. So, representing the agency perspective, you work with tons of retailers. What is it that you see as being some of those top challenges in retail media?
Good question. I think every retailer is actually probably facing into the same challenges. And some of the things that we help them with is that they're not here on their own to do that. Every retailer is trying to grapple with this. Retailers are brilliant at selling product, but they are not naturally media companies. And I think we talked about the organizational structures on the CPG side earlier, but for retailers, they're having to grapple with that and the organizational structures to become media companies, to have the expertise to be able to empower brands with brilliant media campaigns that they should be able to do. So I think that's one thing. It's happening everywhere. You're not alone. And it's happening on both the retailer and the brand side. I think the other thing that we're seeing that's really common is there's a whole host of data out there, but dare I say it, there's data fatigue. You know, data is brilliant, it's powerful, but there can also be too much data, and it's hard to see the wood through the trees sometimes. So I think it's about really ensuring that the right metrics are in place and that you're being transparent with that. And as I was saying earlier, having that real two-way conversation to create that, because that ultimately empowers both parties to grow. And we want this industry to grow. We want it to achieve those numbers we saw on the screen earlier, and hopefully overtake some of the more traditional formats. And to do that, there has to be that collaboration between all parties. So yeah, from a kind of not a retail view, not a CPG view, that's what we're seeing with all our retail and brand partners at this point.
So my next question is for John. What do you wish that more brand partners would do or consider doing when running a retail media campaign?
I'd say focus on the incremental. And I actually don't mean like incremental sales, because candidly, like trying to attribute like a single ad impression to a specific transaction, it's not going to work. I'm not trying to be negative, but there's so much noise, there's so many variables to control, it's virtually impossible. I think rather I would love to see more brands incorporating retail media into their JVPs with their retailers at the outset of the year. I'd love to see more brands focusing on like the desired outcome versus just looking at it as just another thing to negotiate with their retailers. And forgive me, like almost looking at it like as a cost of doing business versus an ability to catalyze additional revenue. If it's done right, if it's done in partnership, it will drive more revenue. Like it'll drive more revenue for the vendor. So I think like not approaching it the same way that my kids think about going to mass on Sunday. Like this is not a thing you have to do because someone told you, it's a thing that you should want to do kind of thing. And then the last thing I would just say is I would focus on the always on. I think like the best programs at driving revenue for a vendor at a retailer are always on. The same way that you wouldn't want to be on shelf for only the 4 weeks out of the year when you're on tab in the old world of flyer, I would approach retail media the same way. So if you're a 52-week per year brand on a shelf, you should be a 52-week per year retail media investor to drive those sales at that particular retailer. And I think approaching it the same way that you approach being on shelf with RM, I think is a great way to make sure that it's actually getting the sort of due that it's owed as a great channel to actually drive sales.
So follow-up question to that, what would your advice then be for brands and retailers as retail media continues to prove its strength across the funnel?
I think the same way that retailers have been on an omnichannel measurement journey with Google and all the other large digital players, I think you're on an omnichannel measurement journey with your respective retailers. And here's where I'll say, like, hold the retailer's feet to the fire. If the retailer isn't providing you omnichannel insights, omnichannel returns, I think that's a reasonable place to push. I would much rather, if I was a vendor or brand, I'd much rather push on that than almost any other thing that I could be pushing on with my retail partner. We all know the role that a merchant plays in the success or non-success of a brand at a retailer. The omni-channel story that you want to tell in partnership with your retail media partner is extremely important to your buyer, who is looking at 90% of their sales still happening in the physical store. So I think, like, if I'm a brand or vendor today, I really want to be pushing on that omni-channel piece. Today, that IAB study that Sonia was sharing earlier on, one of the most jarring facts in it is Amazon is 40% of e-commerce in Canada, it's 80% of retail media. 40% of e-commerce and double that in terms of share on retail media. So the reality is, if that is only about 1 in 10 customers and how they choose to transact in your categories, it could potentially mean you're leaving a lot of customers out in the cold, and you're leaving a lot of your other retail players out in the cold as well. So that's where I would push.
Richard, what would you add to that advice?
You know, the advice I had there is, you know, build the relationships with these retail media networks. It's building the JVPs, or like they said before, it's working through the JVPs with them. It's understanding the long-term goals, not just, you know, one program at a time. It's getting them to understand the business, working together so that you can just better solve, you know, the objectives you're setting out to and do them together.
Sean?
I think everything that the guys are saying is really fair. I think a lot of the stuff that we've heard today is showing that there is massive opportunity for growth, but also the Amazon piece that you just pulled out, I think is really interesting. I think everyone wants to be Amazon, and retailers don't need to be Amazon. They just need to have retail media networks that can showcase that there is value to work with them, and that the brands are getting the growth out of that. So North Star, Amazon, maybe not, but feel free to be creative and work in collaboration and partnership to drive that forward.
That's great advice. So before we wrap today, I want to end on a rapid fire round of fill in the blank questions. Are you game?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So fill in the blank. First up, the future of retail media is?
AI-powered personalization.
Ooh, good one. Don.
Way better what I was going to say. Accelerating. Fastest growing media channel, and there's no reason to believe that won't be the case.
Transparent. Without wanting to sound like a broken record, transparency is key.
All right, fill in the blank. The worst retail media mistake I made was?
Underestimating the importance of building a clear target audience.
Not bringing merchants along for the ride.
Loving cardboard for too long. I think being a store-first retail media network business in the UK, people loved cardboard for far too long.
Fill in the blank. The best retail media campaign I've seen was?
Could it have been my own?
Yes.
So then from the team was the Keurig K Express Essentials launch at Walmart.
The 2014 Walmart Easter Baking Center that did triple-digit sales lift on the vendors that participated, and a lot more than other vendors who did not participate.
I would call out Harry's, the shaving brand that went from being a D2C brand to launching in some key strategic retail partners, but using the first-party data to actually really take on that competition in a category where they didn't really have any dominance, and now they're on good growth.
All right, our last fill in the blank question. The last thing retail media made me buy was?
This would be the most random thing you've heard all day, so it's a good way to end it. Sponsored ad on Instagram made me buy a Christmas ornament storage box.
Don.
It's pretty boring, just Cole Haan pair of shoes at a retailer.
Mine were these trousers, or pants, I should say, these pants. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. Let's give them a round of applause.